or what we read about, and I chose speech or language impairment because I thought it sounded really interesting. A speech or language impairment is a communication disorder such as stuttering, impaired articulation, a language impairment, or a voice impairment that adversely affects a child's educational performance. And so a key thing right there is probably right here where it talks about a child's educational performance, because a lot of people can think of many people who have language issues or problems speaking, but it isn't until it really disrupts the educational performance and really is a big deal that it becomes one of the things that we need to talk about and becomes something that a child needs special help with. There are 4 major areas to having a language or speech impairment. One is articulation, where the child will produce sounds incorrectly. An example of this would be having a lisp or difficulty articulating certain sounds like L or R. Something you might have heard of from young children. They sometimes have this issue. Fluency is another one, where a child's flow of speech is disrupted by sounds, syllables, and words that are repeated, prolonged, or avoided, and where there may be silent blocks or inappropriate inhalation, exhalation, or phonation patterns. Child's voice has an abnormal quality to its pitch, resonance, or loudness. And then language, child has problem expressing needs, idea, or information, and or understanding what other people have to say. So like I said, those are the 4 major areas. To kind of help us see this, if you can just have those 4 areas in mind, we have this video where it talks about Looney Tunes and talks about the different people in Looney Tunes and how they have different of the major areas of the speech impediments. So,
speech disorder refers to the difficulty one may have producing sounds or speaking fluidly. Today we'd like to introduce you to some of our favorite Looney Tune characters who have speech disorders.
I taught a putty cat. I did. I taught a putty cat.
As you saw in the video, Tweety Bird has an articulation disorder. He substitutes taw for saw and putty-tat for pussycat. It is common for children to substitute letters in their speech, but it becomes a concern when they do not grow out of it. Next, let's take a look at our friend Porky Pig.
That's all, folks.
Here, Porky Pig has a stutter. There is an interruption of his speech when he repeats and prolongs the word "that's" in the phrase, "That's all, folks." Now, we're on to Daffy Duck.
You're despicable.
What we have here is a lisp, which is a type of substitution. Daffy Duck substitutes the s sound in despicable with the th sound, which makes the word come out as despicable. Oftentimes, those with a lisp substitute the sounds of the letters Z or S with TH because they have difficulty forming the sounds of the letters with their mouths. Next, I'd like you to try and figure out what difficulty in speech Elmer Fudd has. You ready?
Wabbit-wanks. Kill the wabbit, kill the wabbit, kill the wabbit.
Kill the wabbit?
Did you guess substitution? If so, then you're correct. Before you go, we want to mention that although we were able to understand each of the Looney Tune characters, not everyone with a communication disorder has the ability to communicate information in a way that others can understand. We must be patient with our friends with disabilities and offer them our support whenever we can. If any of you have a speech disorder and would like to seek help, contact your local speech pathologist or find out more information on acquiring assistive technology. You never know what services can really make a difference in your life. Thanks for watching.
So I liked watching that video just because it kind of gives the Looney Tunes as an example, which is kind of fun. So I hope you were able to really see the different major areas with the Looney Tunes and be able to kind of get it in your mind what a speech impediment actually is, and kind of think of examples of times you've heard it or people you've known who've had that have had this trouble in their lives. Um, so the causes um, of having a speech or language impediment is hearing loss, neurological disorders, brain injury, intellectual disabilities, drug abuse, physical impairments such as cleft lip or palate, and vocal abuse or misuse. But I wrote here at the bottom, it says in the article that most of the time the cause of this is really unknown. Usually what happens is that the child will start to have issues with their speech or with their language, and they'll go in and they'll realize that they have a disability in this area, but the doctors won't be able to know exactly how they received it. They'll just say, well, they do have it now, but we do not know how they got it. So these causes up here are known to be causes of it, but most of the time your student will not know how he received it. Just so you know how many there are, of the 6.1 million children with disabilities who receive special education under IDEA, more than 1.1 million were categorized as speech or language impairment. This doesn't include the children who had other disabilities. Like I said before, there's 13 different ones. So if they had one of the other 12 listed first, and this was more of a secondary impairment or disability, then those weren't categorized as this. So really, there are a lot of the students who have disabilities and receive special education have this issue, even if they have another issue that's more that's a bigger deal. They might also have this one as well. So it's really good to know how we can help students with this. So getting help for speech or language impairment, if you suspect your child has a speech or language impairment, for example, if your child is under 3, you can use the early intervention system to get your child evaluated for free by experts who will be able to tell you what your child has, and then get you in line with the people who will help you get a plan set together for your child already, even though they're so little. But then if you have a school-age child, then you can receive help just like all the other disabilities through the special education and through IDEA, by contacting the people at the school or other ways and getting your child evaluated and getting together a group for them and getting their plan together for them. So the main thing we want to focus on with these is the tips for us as teachers, how we can help students who have these impairments. And I think through all of them, they always have the one at the start that says, learn as much as you can about the student's impairment, which I think is really important, because if we have no understanding of how the impairment works and how it's affecting the students, then we really won't be able to help them as much as if we do. Plus, I think it's important to have that sympathy for the children and students who this affects by really getting to know it and really trying to put ourselves in their shoes, and what would we want from our teachers, right, if we had this impairment or this struggle. The other thing that in most of these is recognize that you make an enormous difference. I can remember countless times when I was a student that my teachers really could make me feel either like I'm super great and doing super good, or they can make me feel like, I'm just a waste of space and I can't do anything. And so it's really important to know that as teachers, we have the ability to really change our students' lives. And so if we can really help our students to feel like they're having success, like they're doing well, then that can be something that's life-changing for them. Another thing is to know the IEP of the child, which is the plan for them, right? That's formed by that team of teachers and parents and experts, getting to know what's really best for the student. So if we can follow that plan, especially where it says below to provide the accommodations, so that plan will have the accommodations that have already been set apart as needed for the student, right? So if we can look at it and know it, then we can know what accommodations we need to give the student and prepare beforehand so we can always have them for them. And then always communicate with the parents of the student. I think that's super, super important, because the parents are with the students way more than we will ever be. And so they know what works, what doesn't work, and they know their children. And some things will work for some children and some will not, right? And so we need to know the parents so they can communicate with us and say, hey, I've noticed you've been doing this with my student, but I know that he works better doing this, right? And so if we can have that open communication, then they can tell us stuff like that so we can make their teaching and learning so much better. So to go along with this, I have another video that at first it talks about kind of understanding the difficulties with speech and language impairment and the different things that children can deal with. And then it goes over very briefly some of the tips. So I think the main difference or main extra thing that was in that video is to be patient. And that's something I didn't talk about during the slide, but I think it's really important